This is a video of key topics that you can use when studying Jasper Jones for an extended response. So in this video, what I'm going to be dealing with is the relationship between Charlie and his mother and his father, and how that changes and develops and makes it part of his broader rite of passage. So, just a bit of context. In the beginning of the novel, Charlie is afraid of his mother, who is seen as formidable and domineering. While he respects his father, he sees him as weaker and as a distant figure. In the early part of the novel, the only parent interaction he has is really with his mother. His mother's the one who is making things happen in the family home, and describes his dad as being withdrawn, and often in his study, away from the rest of the world. You get an indication really clearly that the family life is pretty stable, although as the novel develops, what we learn is that it's actually not. There is deep-rooted unhappiness within the family home, and throughout the events of the novel, the relationships between the parents actually quite change. Charlie, although he sees his mother as quite domineering and formidable, he doesn't question it. But as he starts to question it, the relationship starts to become more distant, and he starts to realize how deeply unhappy his mother is, to the point where he discovers that she has been having an affair with a man in the town, and that prompts the mum to actually leave both Charlie and her husband, and return to town. Whereas the relationship with the father begins with him being distant but a presence in his life. But slowly, as he starts to question things, the bond between him and his father actually gets stronger. And it's through small moments they share that by the end of the novel, they're actually really quite close, and they see a lot of similarities in each other, and they start to develop a family unit that is just the two of them. So when we look at rites of passage, what we're actually looking at with these relationships is the idea that a development of these relationships show that a rite of passage and this transition can be shown in a series of small moments as opposed to one big moment. Particularly when looking at this novel, Charlie's biggest rite of passage is prompted and is catalyzed by finding Laura Wishart's body. But it's these smaller moments with his parents that actually shape those relationships, and in a very practical sense, it's those smaller moments that actually shape that family unit and disrupt the family unit. So the mum, who at the beginning of the novel is this dominant figure who is unquestioned, whatever she says goes in the family household. This is highlighted more than any other scene than with the whole. So Charlie sneaks out one night, comes back, and is punished for questioning his mother's authority by her saying he has to start digging this hole. Doesn't give him a reason why, just says start digging. And then once he's dug to a certain point, she says, okay, fine, you now have to fill the entire thing back in. There's no point to it. And when asked, she doesn't actually give a reason beyond, this is what I've told you to do and you will follow what I say. And because Charlie has started to question the world around him, the symbol of that hole is actually quite great. It is the moment that shifts the relationship between mother and son. Previously, he went along with whatever because he knew that is the way that things work. But the attitude of the mother with this punishment that seems cruel, and when you read the book, because there's no point to it and she gives no rationalization behind it, there's no grand lesson, it seems vindictive. So the symbolism of that hole is that the relationship has changed. Charlie no longer sees her as this figure that will always be correct or acts in the best interest of him. He sees her as this flawed figure who is not doing the right thing. This is continued on with him seeing her come home drunk. And one of the times that he sneaks out, he thinks that he's going to be caught, but she actually stumbles in and is completely off her face. And this is the first time that he notices that she's not coming back with his father. They went separately. So he's noticing that she is not as composed as he always thought, and that she is just like anyone else. And this noticing of that weakness is punctuated with him finding out that she's having an affair. So he actually, while in the climax of the book, while going with Jasper to confront Mad Jack Lionel, sees his mother having an affair. And this moment completely changes that power dynamic. She was domineering and unquestioning, and now Charlie has all the power. Charlie sees this transgression, Charlie knows this information, and this information can ruin her. And she knows that. But more than anything else, Charlie sees how weak she is. She's desperately unhappy, and that's why she's having an affair. But now Charlie recognizes this and recognizes that this woman is not this domineering, not this powerful force in his life, but actually someone quite bruised and someone quite callous in some ways. It's because of this affair and because of this knowledge of this affair that she actually moves away. She moves back to the city where she's from because of how deeply unhappy she is, and in essence just leaves Charlie and her husband behind, creating her as now the distant parent. On the other side, we have the father. At the beginning of the novel, we know that he gives book collections to Charlie when he starts to question the world around him. Once Charlie starts to question things, the father starts revealing more and more. So the more Charlie's questioning the world, the more his father is starting to reveal things that he understands to him and starts revealing part of himself to him. Almost like because Charlie's becoming an adult, the dad feels free enough to speak to him like he's becoming an adult. And he does this first by sharing his books. The symbol of the books is that beginning relationship. It's the father giving that olive branch, giving that symbol that I think you're ready for this, and I think you're ready to have these conversations and to think about the world. So he gives him some of his favorite novels, things like To Kill a Mockingbird, which this book is actually really heavily borrowing elements from. And that starts him thinking about the relationship and about the symbolism of that relationship. The next thing that highlights that the way in which they interact is the way his father deals with the Lus. So Mr. Lu's garden gets destroyed in a racist attack, and Charlie's dad actually goes and actively tries to help the situation, prompting Charlie to think about his dad differently. So this is actually an allusion to Kill a Mockingbird, where Scout, the main character, starts to see her father differently after he takes action on a dangerous situation. So that allusion to Kill a Mockingbird and that idea of understanding the parent better, leading to a closer relationship. And the final thing is the manuscript. So the father, in the beginning, is distant. He's always locking himself in the study. We learn that he's locking himself in the study because he's writing a book. When he hands the manuscript, which is the draft copy of the book, to Charlie and saying, I want you to be the first person to read this, that is the final symbol of how close they've grown. is that his greatest critic and the critic that he wants to please the most is his son. And so he's gone from this passive voice that is distant in his life to someone actually quite active. So the relationships between child and parent, between mother and father, shift from beginning to end. And it's all because of these small moments that start to make up this broader rite of passage and this idea of getting to know your parents better. And that moment where you know who your parent is as a person. So for the mother, that's actually revealing negative aspects of her personality that she kept quite guarded. And for the father, it's actually learning how similar they are and being let into each other's worlds.